Hey, Zerm listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's see what happens.
I did get a lot out of that class. Did you?
Right, so it's still in line with that hypothesis I have about this mode that he goes into where he just tries to be very positive, trying to win her back. And then once he gets her back, then it goes back to the other mode. The way people talk about it online, it's like some Machiavellian plan that he has, that he's going to groom her or, convince her, trick her into, gaslight her into being in a relationship with him again. And that's not typically what happens. It could be that, but it's not typically volitional. The individuals who do these kinds of things aren't usually waking up in the morning and saying that they're going to cause the roller coaster on purpose. It's the amount of lack of self-awareness in the world and among humans is really high. So the fact that people have these kind of patterns and have a weird way of looking at it, have a distorted narrative about it, shouldn't surprise us. Anyway, so we're seeing that mode is still happening. And I don't know if that mode is actually happening for them, but I'm talking about this to y'all, that you can think about in your own life. And maybe it's not this pattern, maybe it's a little different, or maybe it's a whole different pattern, but that when we concentrate on what's happening, or we reflect, or we have self-awareness, or we ask for feedback, and we try to differentiate, we try to distance ourselves from our feelings for a time. We want to have our feelings and we want to know them, but sometimes we want to be able to try to pull away from them, especially when we have the time and the space to do so, and to look at them. Therapy can help with this, obviously. But anyway, so for this pattern, he's still in that mode of accommodation, trying to win her back. That's the way I would describe it. Maybe even in a position of vulnerability and fear of losing her. And she's in the standoffish, rejecting mode. And then he will win her over, or she will convince herself that everything's fine, or enough time will pass, and then they'll go back to the original main cruising mode. That's, I think, usually what happens. And there's different versions of this pattern where they will break up for maybe 6 months, but eventually they come back. Or the pattern could be in one day where they have a minor blow up and then they return. But the pattern is still there. I've seen it enough times on the show to hypothesize of its existence.
I was rolling my eyes the whole time tonight, every time you try to make a joke, because you can't be serious in the moment.
I'm just looking for that laugh.
But sometimes I need you to be serious.
I need to calm down my comedy.
Yeah, I think they're speaking cross purposes. She, I think, is trying to get at, look, when I wouldn't be surprised if she, and we can't expect her to have a ton of self-awareness either, or the ability to describe things, because she's crying as she's saying, you were making bad jokes. It's not just because he was making bad jokes. I'm guessing that what's happening for her, that she's trying to say, and they're editing it, maybe she should say it, but I'm guessing for her was something like, we're going through a really rough time. We had a really rough time last night. We had a really rough time this morning. We're going to this class. I keep telling you that we need to take this process seriously. Yes, it was a sex ed class, but I want you to take this seriously, even stuff like that. And for you to be constantly making those jokes that no one else was laughing at, and it just is another tick in the column that it makes me feel like you don't really care, you're not taking this seriously, and you don't care about me, and you don't care about my feelings, and you're never going to change, we're never going to change, and we're doomed. That's what the joke's meant to me. I think that's what she means, but instead she just says you were making jokes as she's crying. And then he says, well, I was just making it, because he doesn't get it. Now, but even if she were to say something along those lines, and I don't know if that's what's going on for her, but I'm guessing it was something like that. Even if she did say something like that, he would still not necessarily really understand what he needs to understand in order to change.
It's I need you to be serious.
I need to calm down my comedy, because the minute things get serious, or if I get nervous, I go funny. And I'm sorry for making jokes instead of paying attention.
Okay, so that's good-ish. But again, it's so far from what I would hope he would say, given the bigger picture. Maybe it's enough, but I think we might be seeing the beginning of sliding back into their cruising mode, which is where he is engaged in his regular defensive structure and she is accommodating.
But I just don't want you to think I'm taking this lightly. I'm not. I'm serious about us. I wanted to.
And normally I'd be saying, oh, good for him. And yeah, but when you see the pattern, I don't know if the pattern exists. We see 0.001% of everything that happens between these two, but it's possible that this is representative and we're seeing at least somewhat of an accurate picture. So if my assumptions are at least close to the mark, it's not optimistic is my point. We've seen this before. I'm feeling feelings that are familiar to me about them, and I think Liz is tracking as well. I imagine she has a mixture of a lot of feelings right now, and part of that is knowing that this is a pattern. She's heard these things before, so I don't know. Yeah, I'm sort of stuck as a therapist that's reacting to this, because normally I would just be reacting to what's happening, but with this couple I keep reacting to what I think is the pattern, and so it's really kind of thrown a wrench in things for me.
But like if something were to happen to me tomorrow and like you knew everything that I needed from you and you didn't give it to me, like that would suck, because I know you would hurt.
That, yeah.
And then like me too, like you can be taken from me tomorrow. And
I thought I knew where Liz was coming from until she started going down this road. Maybe she's trying to emphasize that it's important to fix their relationship today because of this possibility of losing each other to death. But I'm a little lost as to where she's coming from. If I were there, I would listen, and then I would say, one of the things that I will do with people is I'll just say, okay, I think I'm understanding what you're saying, but can you just say it in a different way or say it in a more simple way? In fact, one of the most famous therapists, Salvador Minuchin, he would often do things like this. He would say things like, there's a video of him doing this with a client. He's like, you're a really smart guy, and I'm not as smart as you, so you're going to have to dumb it down for me. So can you dumb it down for me, please? There's a little bit of laughter, and it's a nice way of trying to motivate someone to speak more plainly and to not convolute things, to not try to get, it's almost, I don't like the phrase overthinking or the word overthinking, if that's one word, because it often is used in a way of shaming people who have emotions and think about things. As someone who was often labeled as an overthinker, as a teenager or something, I feel like, well, what do? Do you never think about anything? I mean, I feel like my thinking actually, it doesn't harm me. It can, I suppose, but it doesn't harm me really. I just think about things. Anyway, so, but in this situation, I wonder if she's overthinking it. Like she has something in her heart that she wants to say, but she wants this analogy to try, or this extreme example to try to motivate or something. Because I'm guessing what she's trying to get at is, I am hurt that you don't put effort into trying to get to know me and understand me and care about me. I feel like we're in this pattern where you just, you think it's not that big of a deal. This is a big deal to me. My feelings are a big deal, and I don't know if you know that or care. I think that's what she's saying, what if I died tomorrow, as a way to try to get to that, but I don't know if it's being received.
I never made you feel like I had your back. And I'm realizing that.
Oh, it just breaks my heart. So that is empathy. That is sorrow. That is sorry. That is apologizing. She doesn't even have to say, I'm sorry. In my 11 components of apologies, nowhere in there does it say you're sorry, because people will often say that. They'll be like, make sure you say you're sorry. And yeah, but there are so many more things that are more important, and it's not actually necessary to say you're sorry to actually effectively apologize. And to overfocus on sorry actually will distract people. So I don't include it in that for that reason. You can say it, but it's not really that important. This is more important. I see it now. I do things that make you feel like I don't have your back. And I'm crying because I feel bad for the pain that I caused you. She just did that with this really little quick moment, which you can effectively apologize in that moment. But what breaks my heart is that she's having empathy for him and having remorse for him, but she doesn't get it back from him. She gets words, but and I'm not saying he by choice doesn't give it back. He might, because of his traumas, just have no understanding. It's like speaking a different language. Not that he doesn't have the capacity, but it's too scary, or the mode in his brain is such that the two modes that I hypothesize he has, they're just too distracted with other things to have that kind of extension into someone else's shoes, especially because it takes a long time. Like, for her to do this, you have to extend yourself into someone else's experience and really push past your own defensiveness and all the reasons why you don't want to admit that you might have done something wrong. And you have to live in the other person's shoes, especially in this scenario, because Ed isn't really and hasn't communicated pain. He hasn't cried about this. He hasn't said, I feel like you don't have my back, and it pains me. She has to go past his defenses, past his bravado, past his problematic behavior, and sense and know the pain inside of him, and then feel bad about that. It's a lot of attention and a lot of effort, and a lot of barriers have to be overcome to get there. It's not simple. It's hard, and he has a lot of those barriers. So he doesn't do that, at least on camera or in the edit. And so there's that, but he's not going to reciprocate, or he'll kind of, but it won't be like this. And they're going to slide right back to the cruising mode. That's the label I've been having for it, where he just goes back to the way, and by their own report, they have a lot of good times, and I don't doubt that. They don't really show a lot of it on camera, but according to their report, 99% of the time or something, everything's fine, and that probably is true. And but when push comes to shove, then everything falls apart and it gets pretty gnarly. I wonder, how do I see that? Because on one hand, you can say, well, they're both traumatized individuals, and if they can eke out some time in their pattern that is non-conflictual and meeting each of their needs for the most part, then what more could you ask for in life? Occasional big fights, given their traumas. It's not great, but it's better than nothing. So that's one possible narrative. The other is that when they're in that nice mode, the 99% time when everything is non-conflictual, they're still not actually getting their needs met. She is having to accommodate and enable too much. I don't know. What do you think? This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I don't know about you, but throughout my day, I have two opposing forces in my mind between what I want to do, like playing a video game or playing with my dogs, and what I should do, like exercise more or eat more fiber or something. As a therapist, I talk with a lot of clients about this inner conflict. Most people think it's all about willpower, even though research demonstrates that willpower doesn't really work. There are a lot of evidence-based techniques that actually work that people don't usually consider, like using behavioral shaping techniques or healing from our relational traumas that keep us stuck internally. Well, one option worth exploring is BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's worth giving a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and suited to your schedule. And also, you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. So make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
I definitely know where Liz is coming from, and I respect that, and I need to work on that. And that will also make it easier for Liz to have my back, which is what I really want.
And on top of it all, she was not the problem. They were in the hot tub together, and Kelly said to Ed, "You overtalk, you interrupt." All Ed had to say was, "Oh, sorry. Yeah, I do that sometimes." And Liz was just being quiet. Ed seemed to be able to handle it himself in the way that he wanted to. Plus, he was being super defensive, and he called Kelly a name. And if you're Liz, you might be like, "Well, I don't know if I can defend what you're doing." Plus, I agree with what is being said, and we're here. You know. In fact, I didn't think about it this way, that for Liz, she's like, this whole 2 weeks is one big therapy session. And what good would it do if every time one of the group members or a therapist actually starts to give him an opportunity to face something, if I were to step in and save him? That's just enabling. That's awful. No, I don't want that. He can handle himself, and I want him to actually... The big thing I'm hoping for is that he can recognize that he does something wrong, and if someone else has to point that out, then I guess that's part of the thing. So anyway, she's being calm, and she's just letting it play out. And then and then he says, "You don't have my back," and she's like, I can't remember the whole sequence, but she's like, "Well, I agreed with what he was saying, so yeah, I guess I didn't have your back." Then both Angela and Ed are just really talking over her, and we only see a little bit of it in the edit. She's like, "I'm going to bed." And then Angela's badgering, and then Liz says, "Well, I love you, Angie, but you overtalk a lot." And then Angie does her extremely over-the-top, abusive, upsetting, aggressive behavior to Liz. I couldn't even watch it. And then now here we are, where Liz is apologizing for not having Ed's back. Oh, and then Ed after that says, "You deserve to be treated that way by Angela. I'm glad it happened to you." The next morning he says it in a nicer way, I guess, but is still saying that. And the whole, so unless, and then Ed, yeah, it's just, I didn't think this transition back to the regular cruising mode would happen so quickly, and yeah, it's upsetting.
This conversation is definitely long overdue, and so maybe this therapy is actually working.
Because she's crying and apologizing to you for having made a mistake that didn't really happen, and you haven't admitted anything, and you're providing no display of sorrow, no empathy, no identification that you did anything wrong. I mean, he'll say, I did this wrong thing, but it's not really the kind of depth, it's not even close to the kind of depth that he would need to exhibit to show that he is in connection with other people's experiences and their feelings, and truly values them, so. And what's the chance that these therapists are even going to be able to assess this issue in the 2 weeks that they have, let alone treat it?
Now we know what the problem is, and we both work on it. I'll be serious when it's time to be serious.
Oh, okay. So he's like, "Oh yeah, I joke too much. That's my problem." That is not the problem. That is a distant, very low on the list of priorities, at least from my standpoint. I don't know about for Liz, but, and also, like, yeah, it's upsetting.
And I know you have my back. I just need to feel it.
Okay, deal. I'm gonna try not to tear you down, and you're gonna try very hard to be serious.
Serious. Yes.
Serious. That's it. That's the only problem, is he needs to be serious. Was he serious when he was telling Liz that she deserved to be attacked by Angela? Was he serious when he was, because he felt humiliated by Kelly, when he got home, decided to take it out on Liz? Was that joking, or was that serious? So serious. That's all he has to be, is just more serious. I don't know what I was expecting, but it's like, I don't know. It's so unfair to Liz, really.
I love you.
Love you too.
All right, give me a high five. Let's go masturbate. I'm just kidding.
So they're referring to the assignment that the sex educator gave everybody to do that. And again, it was a long class. I only saw bits and pieces, but and it didn't appear that anyone in that class wanted to talk about what they were talking about. Maybe they did, but it is, I think, the way that it looks, in that they, as couples, signed up to be on a TV show that happened to have therapy as a part of it. And none of them, I mean, half the couples were like, we don't have a sex life anymore. So, and like I was saying earlier, yeah, you can have sex therapy or even sex education or with couples in those situations, but it's a different sort of exploration. There's a lot of assessment with me when I work with people in sexuality, particularly when we get into specifics like this and they ask me to help them, then I have to do a pretty lengthy assessment. It's not necessarily formalized, but there's a lot of details that I need to know. What do they want? What are they looking for? Where are they coming from? For example, I had a queer individual come to me one time asking me to make them not queer anymore. We explored it, and eventually they understood that it was okay for them to be queer and they didn't need to change. You know, they were only asking this because of society and their family and their religion. It was complicated. It was way more complicated the way I'm describing it. But my point is that prescribing interventions like this to individuals without knowing the landscape would be really hard and would carry with it some risk. Maybe that was done, and maybe there was enough assessment even in the class, that they edited out. It's not usually how these things play out. You don't go to, for example, now she wasn't a sex therapist, she's a sex educator, but I know more about sex therapy, and you don't go to a sex therapist and, independent of what you say, they just assign you things like this, because for some people, they don't want to. There was even talk about how Michael with Angela and a little bit of a Swelu, it's against their religion and culture to do that. And of course, you don't want to ask people to go against their religion, right? And maybe there was some flexibility there, but you don't want to colonialize another group of people and say, you will do what Americans do, which is this sort of thing. That's obviously not just or clinically helpful. So, it's for the show. It gives them something to talk about on the show. It gives some sexiness to the show. I don't know. Now, might it help? Sure. I'm curious as to what the intervention is meant to do. I guess we'll find out. But I just wish that it's hard to watch a therapy retreat when I think it's not necessarily designed to be that way. If I were there or other people and the show wasn't there, you would want to tailor the sex therapy and the assessment to every couple and maybe every individual. I mean, there are people who, the illuminating thing to me, which was interesting, is that it seemed like everyone in the room, I guess aside from Jovi and Yara, but maybe even them, but everyone in the room seemed to have some trouble with their sex life that had been long-term. And they also seemed really, in a very typical way, very repressed and non-communicative about some pretty fundamental issues, which is normal for people to do, particularly in sex-shaming societies like the United States. So I don't know why, that doesn't usually come up on the show. If anything, they usually just try to emphasize how wild their sex life is. It's one of the tropes on these kinds of shows, Darcy and Stacy, this kind of thing. But when it was sort of real talk about sex, they talked about how Liz was talking about how sex with Ed more recently has been not so great because he gets tired and has to take a break every 5 minutes because he had surgery recently. And Liz was kind of being critical and shaming of him when, one, he might not have any control. He was saying, yeah, I need to get back in shape. Not everyone has control over that. Plus, he's almost 60. Now, I'm almost 60, so whatever. But, things change, and endurance changes, health changes, sexuality changes. So it could be really complicated for Ed. It might not just be that he just needs to work out more or he needs to do more cardio. That might be it. It might be. But it might be that his body is changing and his sexuality is changing, and it has some downsides to it or some adjustments that need to be made. And that conversation might need to be included. So it just seemed interesting to me how much, even from the little bits that we saw, how much needed to be talked about in order for them to optimize their sex lives. Jovi and Yara had one difference. Jovi wanted to have sex more, and Yara was saying that she wanted more romance and foreplay beforehand. And he was saying, he said this phrase, he said, I just don't understand why I have to do nice things for you in order to have sex with you. And I want to give Joey the benefit of the doubt, but there's an interpretation of that whole conversation that Jovi, and in lieu of the whole conversation around her having a baby, of course this makes sense. A lot of men are like this, where they literally believe that the wife and her body is their possession and they have full control over it and full say over things. And because the way Jovi is like, essentially what Jovi is saying is, but I want another kid, so you're going to have another kid. End of story. And that's probably why Yara wasn't saying anything and why she went on the pill or birth control without telling him, because she's like, he won't stand for this, that kind of thing. And he sort of continued to do that even after the therapy session, even after they had made up. So it doesn't surprise me, but I guess I am a little surprised. I guess I was hoping that Jovi just wasn't like that. I thought he was more contemporary, but I guess not. Meaning that, I don't know, he's younger. You'd think he would just have a more progressive point of view, but that's not guaranteed. But yeah, the way he was talking about sex is, he's just like, I don't understand why I have to do nice things for you. Now, I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think maybe he was saying something like, I wouldn't be surprised if a component of him saying that, because it sounds so bad, right? I don't understand why I have to do nice things for you in order to use your body for my own purposes. It's like, whoa, that's not what he said, but it comes across that way. But I wondered if for him, in the beginning of the relationship, they would have these, and the sex educator talked about this, that they would have just spontaneous sex times, and neither one of them had to work at it very much, right? Things are starting to cool down in their lust-wise in their relationship as time goes forward. Also, she had a kid. So maybe there's conflict that is also cooling things down a little bit. Who knows? But I wonder if for him, he's thinking, I liked it the way it was before. And another element to this that often isn't included, especially in the men's rhetoric, is that when I hear that from Jovi, when I hear I want to have sex more, what I hear is, just sex. But I also hear, 80% of that is a bid for closeness and connection. Sex is a very effective way of connecting, a very unique experience of connecting. It's not necessarily needed, and not everyone wants that sort of thing, but it's a very intimate experience. It's nonverbal, especially when everything's going okay, not necessarily like performance-wise, but when trust is established and you're listening to each other, and maybe you're not even having sex, but the physical, we're physical creatures, we're animals, and we apparently evolved for that and need it a lot of times to some extent. So when I hear that, because for a lot of men, they're socialized to discount their feelings and to not be like a woman, and women ask to cuddle and women ask to talk, and I'm a tough guy and I don't need any of that gay stuff. All of their intimacy and connection and attachment and love needs get funneled through sexuality, because that's the one thing that they're allowed to express and want. And under toxic masculine mandate, they must have sex all the time. Otherwise, they're not really a man. They're not a real man. And maybe even impregnate people. That's another part of an extension of toxic masculinity. And so often what I'm hearing when I hear someone that in a heterosexual relationship with a husband is really badgering for that, what I hear is that he's lonely and he wants a connection. And so it takes a while, but I'll introduce these topics overtly maybe, and also talk with the couple and try to expand the repertoire for the man regarding how he bids. Also expanding his connection to himself, giving him permission to want to cuddle or want to conversate or want to hold hands or want eye contact or want to cry together or want to dance together or be together or, I don't know, make plans together. All the things that we do as humans, regardless of gender, that brings us together. And so once they get in connection with that, in addition to sex, they are able to go, okay, I've the sort of golden point, what I'm really looking for is golden point, the golden zone, I don't know, is when the male client will report to me, okay, earlier in the week, I had this urge to want to have sex with my wife, and I stopped and I thought about what I might really want. And what I figured out was I did really want to have sex, so we had sex. But then the next day, I had the same urge to have sex with my wife, and I stopped, and I thought, what is it I really want? And what I figured out in that moment, like we've been talking, is I was lonely because my wife was spending a lot of time with the kids and spending a lot of time at work, and she was on the phone with her mom, and I miss her, and I just wanted some love. I just wanted a hug or some acknowledgement or a date night or something. And in addition to sex, but I wanted these other things. And so I asked for that, and she hugged me, and I felt great. Normally, I just would have been like, let's have sex. And I might even went up to her and started groping her while she was on the phone with her mom. But that's not really what I wanted. And I know now that that's not respectful. She doesn't receive that well. I have a larger repertoire of understanding myself and expressing myself. We talk about sexism, misogyny, but our gender brainwashing harms everybody. You could argue in today's world, like contemporary American society, well, I wouldn't go that far, but it hurts men a lot. It hurts everybody. It hurts women more at a systemic level, but at least women are shamed less for their feelings. They're shamed less for having vulnerability. They're still shamed for it, but men are like in a real rough spot regarding that. So helping them with that. So that's what I hear from Jovi. I'm not hearing that every time he wants to have sex along those lines. So anyway, I wonder if when Jovi says, I do something nice for you, he's just thinking, I just want to connect and I want it to be easy, and I'm getting rejection from you at times, which hurts my feelings, and I don't know what to do, and it's very frustrating. That's what I'm hearing. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really, really do.